Welcome, gentle listener. Tonight, we are going to drift together through an unsettling tale, woven with mystery and whispers of the unknown. Imagine yourself far from the comfort of your home, in a place where the air feels a little heavier, where the land beneath your feet holds stories older than the trees that grow there. A place where the winds carry secrets that have been passed down through generations. The Skinwalker Zone, a land steeped in Navajo legend, is one of those places. Far from the bustle of modern life, it is a remote and unsettling corner of the world where stories of the supernatural have flourished. There are tales of curses and creatures, of encounters that leave witnesses forever changed. Tonight, we will explore why it wouldn't be wise to spend a night in such a place. And as we journey through these eerie accounts, you'll be enveloped by the calm rhythm of the night, the whisper of the wind, and the occasional sound of distant thunder. Let the soothing rain guide your mind as we delve into this tale, a tale of creatures, shadows, and strange happenings that will leave you wondering. What truly lingers in the dark corners of the earth? Settle in. Let your thoughts drift as we begin our story. Imagine the stillness of the night wrapping around you like a thick, suffocating blanket. You're alone, far away from the hum of civilization, surrounded only by the vast expanse of the Utah desert. The air is cool, but it carries a heaviness to it, a subtle weight that seems to press down on your chest. Above you, the stars stretch endlessly in every direction, casting their faint light over the empty, barren land. It should be peaceful, you think, a moment to embrace solitude and reflection. But as you set up camp in the shadow of Skinwalker Ranch, an odd tension begins to crawl beneath your skin. The vastness of the desert, once peaceful, now seems more oppressive. You pitch your tent, your movements methodical, but there's something about the land, something beneath the earth that you can't quite place. There's an energy here, an unsettling presence that doesn't sit right. You shake it off, trying to convince yourself it's simply the unfamiliarity of the place, the quiet that feels so much different from the noise of the world you know. As night begins to fall, the temperature dips, and the stillness of the desert is only broken by the occasional whisper of the wind moving through the scrub brush. The moon rises, casting its pale light across the land. It's beautiful, in a way serene, almost hypnotic. Yet there's a disquieting sense of something watching, something waiting, that settles over you like a thick fog. You crawl into your sleeping bag, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in the back of your mind. The night drags on, each moment seeming to stretch longer than the last. At first, you hear nothing but the sound of your own breath, shallow as you try to relax. But then, it starts. A soft, subtle scratching at the edges of your tent. At first, you dismiss it as the wind, the dry, cracking brush brushing against the fabric. But it doesn't stop. Instead, it comes again, louder this time. Sharp, deliberate, like claws testing the boundaries of your fragile shelter. You freeze, heart pounding in your chest. Could it be an animal? A curious coyote, perhaps? Something harmless, seeking shelter from the cold? You tell yourself to relax, that it's just the wilderness, just the way of things in this strange, wild land. But deep down, something tells you this isn't right. You unzip the tent flap slowly, carefully, heart thumping louder with every passing second. You peer out into the night, your eyes straining to make sense of the darkness. Nothing, only the wind, moving in soft gusts. No rustling of leaves, no sign of movement, just stillness. But that feeling of being watched doesn't leave. It lingers, clinging to you, as if the shadows themselves are alive, shifting around you in ways you can't comprehend. You convince yourself it's just nerves, just your imagination running wild in the silence. But the scratching continues, growing in intensity, moving around the perimeter of your tent like a predator testing its prey. You back away from the opening, pulling the flap shut with shaky hands. You lie there in the dark, listening intently, waiting for the sound to stop. But it doesn't. It seems to grow louder, closer. The tent shifts slightly with every scrape, as if something large is pacing outside, just beyond your reach. Sleep becomes impossible. Every creak of the fabric, every snap of the wind, feels like a warning. You check the time, but the hours seem to have melted away. 1 minute it's midnight, the next it's nearly dawn. Your mind is cloudy, foggy with exhaustion, yet you can't close your eyes. The night feels like it's stretching into eternity, and you're trapped in it, caught between the waking world and the dreamlike haze of fear. Then, when the first light of morning finally breaks over the horizon, you cautiously step outside, hoping to see the familiar, calming landscape of the desert. But instead, you're met with a chilling sight. Deep, jagged claw marks surround your tent. Massive, curved prints, as if something with enormous paws had been circling you while you slept, or at least tried to sleep. You hadn't heard a thing. No rustling, no growls. Just the oppressive silence of the night. You stare at the prints, your mind racing, your body frozen in place. They're unmistakable, unmistakably wrong. Not the kind of tracks made by any animal you recognize. The edges are too sharp, the depth too deep, as if the creature that left them was far heavier and far larger than anything you could imagine. You swallow your throat dry and look around again. The land seems still, untouched by anything other than the marks left behind. It's a moment suspended in time, and yet you can't shake the sense that the land itself is telling you something. That something is always watching, always waiting. And it's moments like this, standing at the edge of the desert with the morning sun rising behind you, that you realize the true danger of Skinwalker Ranch. It's not just the stories. It's not just the legends. It's the feeling, the undeniable presence that lingers in the air, as if some force exists here, something far older and more powerful than you can comprehend. You know, in that moment, that no one really lasts a night here. The land itself seems to claim its visitors, leaving them with only questions, with nothing but the gnawing uncertainty of whether they are truly alone or if they've been watched all along. To understand why Skinwalker Ranch holds such a terrifying reputation, we must turn to the experience of one family, the Gormans, who became entangled in the strange and dangerous forces that seem to inhabit the land. Their time at the ranch, beginning in the early 1990s, would become one of the most well-documented and chilling accounts to date, and it offers a glimpse into the bizarre and unsettling nature of this cursed place. When the Gorman family first arrived at Skinwalker Ranch, they were simply looking for a peaceful life on a piece of land far removed from the distractions of the modern world. Little did they know that the ranch, already steeped in rumors and local legends, had something far darker in store for them. At first, the oddities were subtle, almost unnoticeable. A strange noise in the night, a distant flash of light across the sky, the occasional odd movement in the corner of their vision. But soon, those subtle disturbances turned into something far more sinister. It began with the cattle. The Gormans had a herd of cows, and one morning they discovered something truly horrifying. Several of their animals had been found mutilated in ways that defied explanation. At first glance, the deaths seemed like ordinary cases of predation, perhaps the work of a predator, such as a coyote or mountain lion. But upon closer inspection, they quickly realized something was terribly wrong. These animals weren't simply killed. They were dissected. Organs were removed with an unnerving precision, as if performed by someone or something with medical knowledge. There were no tracks in the dirt, no signs of a struggle, no visible predators nearby. The blood was drained, leaving the carcasses eerily lifeless, as if the creatures had been drained of both life and essence. And these weren't isolated incidents. The mutilations continued, happening with increasing frequency. Each time, the pattern was the same. No sign of struggle, no sign of predators, and always an unsettling sense that the land around them was watching. The family sought help from local authorities and veterinarians, but no answers could be found. Investigations came up empty, and yet the mutilations didn't stop. It was as if the land itself had become a place of unnatural death, a zone where the rules of nature no longer apply. But the cattle were only the beginning of the Gorman family's nightmare. As the days turned to weeks, strange occurrences began to infiltrate their home. At first, the disturbances seemed trivial, just the odd creaking of the house, or doors that refused to stay shut. But then, things escalated. Doors would slam shut with violent force, rattling the entire house, even though there was no wind, no draft to account for it. Rooms that had been locked when they left the house would be mysteriously opened upon their return. Sometimes, they'd find furniture rearranged, items scattered around the room, as if something or someone had been inside while they weren't looking. One evening, the family was sitting together when they heard a series of loud bangs coming from upstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. The problem? No one was upstairs. They went to check, only to find the upper floors empty, the rooms undisturbed. But the feeling in the house was undeniable. There was something else there, something that didn't belong. As the days passed, these disturbances grew more frequent, more unnerving, and then came the helicopters. Above the ranch, military helicopters began to hover, often circling the property for hours on end. The Gormans would watch as the aircraft would fly in a slow, methodical pattern, casting long shadows over their home. But when they tried to inquire about these strange visits, the military offered no answers. The helicopters would come and go without explanation, leaving the family to wonder why they were being watched, or if someone was aware of something they weren't. The helicopters seemed to be drawn to the ranch's strange happenings, or perhaps they were monitoring something the family couldn't comprehend. The Gormans never received a clear answer as to why these military craft were circling their property, but their presence only deepened the mystery. It was as though Skinwalker Ranch wasn't just a place of strange happenings. It was a site of interest, a place where something larger, something outside the realm of ordinary understanding, was unfolding. Throughout all of this, the Gorman sense of unease continued to grow. They couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and powerful was present on the land, a force that was not only capable of tormenting them, but had perhaps been waiting for them to arrive. The land seemed to respond to them, reacting to their presence in ways that were impossible to explain. The unnatural feeling that settled over the ranch became more pronounced with each passing day. They realized that the place itself, the very ground beneath their feet, had a strange power, a malevolent energy that seemed to affect everything it touched. Eventually, unable to cope with the relentless, inexplicable disturbances, the Gormans were forced to leave the ranch. But the memories of what they had experienced would never fade. The mutilations, the doors slamming, the strange lights and helicopters, they had become witnesses to something far darker than they had ever anticipated. Skinwalker Ranch had a grip on them, and once you step into that world, there is no easy escape. The Gorman story is one of many that echo through the lore of Skinwalker Ranch, a place where the boundaries of reality and the supernatural seem to collapse into each other. And while their experiences are some of the most terrifying, they are by no means unique. Many have come to Skinwalker Ranch with curiosity, seeking answers, only to leave with more questions than they ever imagined. The ranch is a place where the veil between the known and the unknown is razor thin, and the consequences of stepping too far can be life-altering, if not outright dangerous. It's clear that Skinwalker Ranch is not just a place, it is a zone, a region where strange forces dwell, waiting for the next person brave or foolish enough to test its boundaries. And for those who arrive seeking answers, the land has a way of ensuring that they'll never quite leave the same. As we continue our exploration of Skinwalker Ranch, we must venture back in time long before the Gorman family arrived or military helicopters began to circle overhead. The land around Skinwalker Ranch is not just a modern-day enigma. It is a place rich in history, where ancient peoples left behind symbols that continue to mystify and intrigue us today. The Uinta Basin, where Skinwalker Ranch resides, is home to an astonishing collection of petroglyphs, rock carvings that have stood the test of time, etched into the very stones of the desert. These markings, created by ancient Native American tribes, may hold clues to the mysteries that have plagued the ranch for centuries. The petroglyphs of the Uinta Basin depict strange, distorted figures, shapes that seem to defy the natural world as we know it. These carvings, preserved in the arid conditions of the desert, are believed to have been created by the Fremont, Ute, and Navajo peoples. But what is most striking about these petroglyphs is the way in which they seem to depict creatures that resemble modern-day cryptids and beings, straight out of local legends. The very same creatures that are said to haunt the land today. Some of the figures carved into the rocks appear to show creatures with elongated bodies, heads that are either animal-like or entirely out of the ordinary, and limbs that stretch in unnatural directions. These are not the typical depictions of animals or people one might expect from ancient rock art. Instead, they seem to represent something entirely different: creatures that blend human and animal traits, entities that are unlike anything in the natural world. Some of the figures resemble large, powerful beasts with exaggerated limbs or horns, creatures that may well have inspired the local legends of the Skinwalker itself. The most striking aspect of these petroglyphs is their uncanny resemblance to the cryptid creatures reported in the area today. The creatures depicted in these ancient carvings appear almost like a premonition, foreshadowing the beings seen by modern-day witnesses. Some of the carvings resemble descriptions of Bigfoot-like creatures, tall, hulking figures with long arms and legs that seem to stand unnaturally straight. Others bear more disturbing similarities to the terrifying skinwalkers, described in Navajo lore, beings capable of transforming into various animals, or even other humans. One particularly chilling petroglyph depicts a humanoid figure with the body of a man, like the head of an animal, a wolf, or a coyote. This figure, with its elongated limbs and glowing eyes, bears a striking resemblance to descriptions of the Skinwalker, shapeshifters said to use dark magic to assume the form of animals and people. The image carved into the rock appears almost fluid, as if the creature itself is in mid-transformation, straddling the line between human and animal. Other petroglyphs show figures that resemble large, clawed creatures, walking on all fours but standing upright like a person. These images bear an eerie similarity to sightings of cryptid creatures like the dogmen or upright wolves reported in the area beasts that seem to defy biology. Creatures that walk on two legs but possess the strength and agility of a predator. These carvings appear to capture moments frozen in time, moments that may hold the secret to understanding the strange events that continue to unfold on Skinwalker Ranch today. Some researchers believe these petroglyphs represent something far more than just artistic expression. They may be a form of ancient documentation, a record of the strange and unexplainable beings that have long been part of the land. The petroglyphs, some believe, are not just representations of creatures, but are symbols meant to warn future generations about the dangers of the land. The figures carved into the stones may not only be artistic expressions, they may be a kind of ancient map, guiding those who venture into the Uinta Basin away from the places where these creatures are most likely to be found. In the same way, the Navajo people are said to have left warnings about the dangers of skinwalkers. These carvings could be a way of marking areas where the veil between the supernatural and the natural world is thin, where strange forces could easily slip through. The idea that these petroglyphs are more than just ancient art is further supported by the disturbing frequency with which these beings have been reported in the area. Could it be that the ancients, who lived on this land long before modern settlers arrived, were trying to document encounters with these creatures, preserving them in a form that would survive the ages? It is as if they were marking a place where the boundary between the known world and the unknown is thinner, a place where ancient forces still hold sway. As we reflect on these petroglyphs, we begin to wonder about their true significance. Are they merely artistic renditions of the animals that roamed this land? Or are they a deeper, darker reflection of something the ancients knew to be true? That Skinwalker Ranch was a place where the unnatural had always existed, a place where the forces of the supernatural might rise from the earth itself? The land has always had a strange energy, one that seems to draw these creatures to it, as if it is a place where the rules of reality itself can be bent or broken. These ancient carvings are a reminder that the strange phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch are not a new development. The creatures that haunt the land, whether they are the Skinwalkers, the Mothmen, or Bigfoot, may be manifestations of something far older, far more ingrained in the land than we realize. The question arises, what is it about this place that draws these strange entities, these shape-shifting beings, and these cryptid creatures to it? And more importantly, what is it about the land itself that seems to allow them to exist in such a tangible, terrifying form? Perhaps the petroglyphs are not just relics of the past, but warnings left behind by the people who lived here, as if to say, do not venture too far. Do not let curiosity pull you too close to the edge. For the creatures that dwell here are not like the ones you know. They are older, more powerful, and they will not hesitate to make their presence known. The more we study these figures, the clearer it becomes that Skinwalker Ranch is not simply a place on a map. It is a location of ancient, powerful significance. The petroglyphs left behind by the ancient inhabitants of the Uinta Basin suggest that this land has always been a place of mystery, a place where strange forces have gathered for centuries. And if the creatures depicted in these rock carvings are any indication, it seems that the land itself is still waiting for someone to stumble upon its secrets once again. As we come to the final chapter of our exploration into the unsettling mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch, we must turn our attention to the scientific efforts made to uncover the secrets that lie hidden in this cursed land. Despite the long history of bizarre phenomena and strange sightings, Skinwalker Ranch has not only been a place of folklore, but also of intense scientific investigation. And while these efforts have often been met with frustration, failure, and the elusive nature of the phenomena themselves, they provide us with a deeper understanding of the place and perhaps offer a glimpse into the unknown forces that call it home. In the late 1990s, a group of scientists from the National Institute for Discovery Science embarked on a high-tech investigation of Skinwalker Ranch, led by Dr. Colm Kelleher, a well-known figure in the world of paranormal research. The team arrived with a battery of sophisticated scientific equipment designed to capture anything that might explain the strange events that had plagued the ranch for decades. From electromagnetic field detectors and infrared cameras to cattle tracking collars and thermal imaging systems, the scientists were prepared to document any anomaly, hoping to finally capture hard, verifiable evidence of what many believed were supernatural forces at work. At first, the team's efforts seemed to bear fruit. Strange electromagnetic anomalies were detected in several areas around the ranch, with spikes in radiation that couldn't be explained by natural causes. They recorded bizarre heat signatures on their thermal imaging cameras, massive bursts of heat rising from the ground where there was nothing to cause them, and unsettling energy readings that defied any logical explanation. The team also observed flashes of light streaking across the sky at speeds faster than any known aircraft, often accompanied by unidentifiable sounds that seemed to echo from nowhere. But despite the high-tech gear and the best efforts of the NIDSI team, no conclusive proof was ever gathered. Time and time again, the cameras and equipment malfunctioned or failed to capture anything substantial. The thermal cameras would sometimes register unusual temperature readings, but there was no way to know for sure what was causing them. The motion detectors would trip for no apparent reason, but when the team investigated, they found nothing. Some cameras would mysteriously stop recording just as something inexplicable occurred, like a shadow moving across the camera's view or an unexplainable light streaking across the sky. The team wasn't just thwarted by faulty equipment. Some of them began to report strange phenomena that they couldn't explain away as simple technical errors. The most disturbing accounts came from the investigators themselves. Members of the team would hear inexplicable sounds, footsteps, low growls, or even whispering voices coming from empty areas of the ranch, or from spots they were certain had been completely uninhabited. These voices, they claimed, seemed to echo around them, faint and unintelligible, but distinct enough to make the hairs on their necks stand on end. It wasn't just sounds either. There were visual phenomena too. Strange lights in the sky, rapid movements at the edges of their vision, shadowy figures darting across the landscape just out of reach. But even more unsettling than these occurrences were the moments when the researchers caught glimpses of something that seemed almost intentional. Something was actively avoiding being caught. Equipment would mysteriously malfunction at the very moments they were capturing something anomalous. A camera would freeze, a motion sensor would short out, or a piece of recording equipment would suddenly go silent. It was as if whatever presence haunted Skinwalker Ranch knew how to avoid detection, or even how to tamper with the very technology meant to reveal it. One of the most bizarre elements of the investigation was the presence of unmarked black SUVs. These vehicles, often seen late at night, rolling up to the perimeter of the ranch, added another layer of mystery to the already strange happenings. Members of the research team reported that, on several occasions, these unmarked SUVs would park outside the property, their drivers staying in the vehicles and watching the team from a distance. No one ever spoke to the researchers or identified themselves. The SUVs would sit for hours unmoving before leaving without a word. The most unsettling part of this mysterious presence was the apparent surveillance. The team would notice the SUVs after they had set up their equipment, often in remote parts of the ranch where no one would normally be. Yet the vehicles always seemed to appear just as something unusual was about to happen. It was as though the occupants of these SUVs were monitoring the investigation, watching the researchers from afar without ever making their presence known. Who were these people? Why were they there? And why did they never speak to the team? This growing sense of being watched added to the already mounting tension around the investigation. It was as though Skinwalker Ranch, in all its strange and terrifying glory, was not just a place haunted by paranormal forces, but one that attracted government or military interest. Theories abounded about who these black-suited individuals were and why they were so interested in the ranch. Were they part of a covert government operation? Did they know something the rest of the world did not? Were they studying the ranch's anomalies for military or intelligence purposes? Despite all of the equipment, all the cameras, all the detectors, and all the interviews conducted with witnesses, the scientific investigation of Skinwalker Ranch failed to uncover any definitive proof of the supernatural forces at play. The team could not capture hard evidence. What they found instead were shadows, glimpses, and unexplained occurrences that only deepened the mystery. Perhaps the most disheartening aspect of the investigation was the silence surrounding it. After the NITC team concluded their research, there was no grand revelation, no clear answers. The findings were largely kept secret, and the few reports that surfaced were vague, inconclusive, and filled with ambiguities. Some of the researchers involved in the investigation have hinted that there was far more to the story than was ever made public. They've alluded to government involvement, secretive operations, and strange phenomena that were either never documented or, if they were, never shared with the public. The silence surrounding Skinwalker Ranch has only fueled further speculation. Was the information suppressed to avoid public panic? Did the government know something about the ranch that the public couldn't be trusted with? What were they afraid of? Were there things happening at Skinwalker Ranch that were far beyond our understanding? Things that our scientific methods couldn't begin to explain? In many ways, this silence may be the most chilling aspect of the Skinwalker Ranch mystery. The lack of definitive evidence, coupled with the shadowy presence of government interest, only deepens the conspiracy theories. Were they hiding something? Or were they simply powerless to explain the inexplicable? And if the government, with all its resources, couldn't uncover the truth, then what chance did anyone else have? Skinwalker Ranch remains a place of profound mystery, where the line between the natural and the supernatural is constantly blurred, and where even the most advanced technology and scientific minds have failed to make sense of the strange forces at work. The ranch is a place where reality itself seems to fracture, where the normal laws of physics and nature don't seem to apply. And until we can uncover the secrets hidden within its boundaries, it will remain one of the most perplexing and terrifying places on Earth. That concludes our exploration of Skinwalker Ranch, a place shrouded in mystery and secrecy. Its true nature may never be fully understood. Thank you for joining me on this journey. As we drift into rest, let the questions and the mysteries of the ranch linger in your mind, but let them fade into the quiet comfort of sleep, knowing that some things are meant to remain unanswered. Welcome to another gentle journey, a space where we explore the deep, uncharted corners of myth and mystery. Tonight, we turn our attention to a figure that lies at the intersection of fear and fascination, the Skinwalker. Imagine yourself in a quiet, isolated place, perhaps under the endless stars of a desert, or nestled among the ancient, whispering trees of a secluded forest. It is here, in the shadows of the night, that tales of transformation and dark magic take root. Tonight, we will not rush. We will not seek thrills, but instead, a quiet reflection on the eerie legends of those who are said to walk between two worlds, the human and the animal, the mundane and the supernatural. Let your mind wander gently as we begin our exploration into the ancient rituals of the Skinwalkers, where magic, fear, and human nature converge in unsettling ways. Feel the weight of the centuries-old stories that have been passed down through generations, stories that have stood the test of time. Each step we take through these tales is one that should be savored for its haunting beauty, its deep connection to the very essence of transformation. Now, take a slow, steady breath and allow the rhythm of my voice to guide you. Let us begin our journey, stepping slowly into the ancient world of the Skinwalker. In the remote reaches of the American Southwest, in places where the earth seems to hold the secrets of ancient civilizations, there are whispers of the Skinwalker. The Navajo people, whose ancestors have roamed this land for centuries, speak of a being that transcends the boundaries of human existence, a creature capable of slipping between the realms of man and animal, of walking in both worlds at once. But the path to becoming such a being is not one of simple choice or mere desire. It is a dark and ancient ritual, fraught with sacrifice and a soul-wrenching decision. The transformation into a Skinwalker does not occur overnight. It is not a gift or an accidental change, but rather a deliberate act, one that involves surrendering part of the self in exchange for something far darker. The journey begins with a single horrifying step. The individual must sever ties with humanity in the most brutal way imaginable. It is said that to become a Skinwalker, the person must first commit a taboo act so severe that it taints their very soul. The most common tale involves the murder of a close family member, often a sibling or parent. This violent and unimaginable act is required to prove that the person is willing to forsake the bonds of kinship, of humanity, in favor of the power of the animal world. Can you imagine the weight of this decision? The internal conflict, the sheer terror that would come with knowing that once this line is crossed, there is no going back? The person who chooses this path not only sacrifices their humanity, but also the peace that comes with knowing their place in the world. The ritual has begun, and once it is set in motion, it becomes a lifelong commitment to an existence beyond the human experience. The next stage of the transformation requires the individual to seek out a powerful shaman or medicine man, a spiritual leader who holds the knowledge of dark magic. This person, steeped in ancient rites, performs a series of rituals that will bind the individual to the spirit of an animal. The skinwalker does not simply become an animal in the way that one might imagine in a simple transformation. They take on the essence of the creature, absorbing its characteristics, instincts, and powers. The animal spirit must be invoked, and in doing so, the person must wear the literal skin of the creature, which becomes a physical vessel for the spirit. Picture the sensation of draping an animal's skin over your own rough fur, the scent of earth and blood, the weight of it settling onto your shoulders as you slowly become something other than human. The transformation is not instant, and it is not easy. There is a profound sense of loss, an unspoken grief that lingers as the person's humanity slips away. The body may change, but the mind remains torn between two identities. The once familiar world is now seen through the eyes of a predator, the instincts of the creature overwhelming the reasoning of the human mind. The power that comes with this transformation is undeniable. The skinwalker gains strength beyond that of any mortal human. Their senses become sharp and heightened, allowing them to see in the dark, hear the slightest sound, and move with unparalleled speed. They become predators in the truest sense, able to blend into the wilderness with the ease of the animals they embody. But this power comes at a cost that is often hidden from the world. To remain a skinwalker, one must continue the rituals, feeding the dark magic that sustains their existence. There is a constant need to invoke the animal spirit, to nourish the transformation. The skinwalker cannot simply slip back into the world of humans. They must constantly walk the fine line between two worlds. One foot in the realm of the living, the other in the domain of the supernatural. And as the years pass, the transformation becomes more complete, the human identity fading away. But there is a subtle, haunting consequence to this path. The longer a skinwalker remains in their transformed state, the harder it becomes to remember their former life. They lose their sense of self, their human memories fading into a distant fog. The animal's instincts take over, and the human soul, once so familiar, becomes a mere shadow of what it was. Now, imagine the internal struggle, the endless tension between the human and the animal, the fear that creeps in as the person begins to realize they no longer know where they end and the creature begins. It is a gradual descent, one that can be as terrifying as it is inevitable. The skinwalker's journey is not one of power without consequence, but one of constant torment. They are forever haunted by their choice, forever caught between two identities that can never fully coexist. The once vibrant human life fades away, replaced by something darker, something that no longer resembles the person they once were. Now that we've delved into the ancient rituals, imagine stepping deeper into the eerie stories of those who are believed to have undergone such transformations. These tales, passed down through generations, are not just about shape-shifting, they are about the profound and terrifying consequences of abandoning one's humanity. What does it mean to become something other than human? And how does it alter the soul? These stories will guide us into a world where reality and myth intertwine, where the boundary between human and animal is blurred beyond recognition. One of the most chilling aspects of Skinwalker legends is the eerie reports of real individuals who are said to have undergone such transformations. These stories are not simply folklore. They are part of the lived experience of those who have heard the whispers, felt the presence of the skinwalkers, or even encountered them face to face. Imagine, if you will, a small, isolated Navajo village in the desert. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows over the arid landscape. The air grows colder as the night approaches, and the villagers gather around the fire, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the flames. As they speak, they share stories of a man, once kind and gentle, who disappeared into the mountains. Days later, he returned, but something was wrong. His eyes no longer held the warmth they once did. Instead, they gleamed with a cold, animalistic hunger. The villagers whispered that he had become a skinwalker, one of the chosen who had crossed the threshold of humanity. As he walked through the village, it was said that his steps were no longer those of a man. His movements were fluid, unnatural, as if he had shed the weight of human form. His voice was no longer the soft, familiar tone of a loved one. It was sharp and guttural, carrying with it a sense of something wild and untamed. He would disappear into the darkness at night, only to return as a different creature, sometimes a coyote, sometimes a wolf, always something predatory, something that did not belong. For those who witnessed his transformation, it was an experience that stayed with them forever. One elder, who had once known the man, spoke of how she could still hear the echo of his voice in the wind, and feel the eerie presence of his animal soul stalking the edges of her thoughts. Even after his physical body was gone, the essence of the Skinwalker lingered, as though the line between man and beast had been permanently erased. Another story tells of a young woman, once a gentle healer, who became something far darker after performing the ritual. She had been drawn to the forbidden powers of the Skinwalker, seeking to gain control over the forces of nature and the spirits. Her transformation began when she donned the skin of a raven, embracing the power of flight and vision. But as she did so, something happened to her mind. The woman, once a kind-hearted soul, began to change. She grew more distant, more consumed by her power. The warmth of her humanity slipped away, replaced by the cold detachment of the raven. Soon, she was seen perched in the trees, watching the villagers from afar, her eyes reflecting an unearthly light. She became an enigma, both feared and revered, a creature caught between two worlds. Her presence was said to be felt in the rustle of the wind through the leaves, in the soft call of a raven on a quiet evening. But no one dared approach her, for to do so was to risk losing one's soul to the darkness that she now embodied. There are other tales, too, of men who became wolves, of women who became owls, of children who, through a dark, twisted magic, found themselves able to take on the form of a coyote. Each story shares a common theme: the price of transformation, the eternal loss of self. In these stories, the Skinwalkers are not simply monsters. They are tragic figures, caught in a constant struggle to retain their humanity while being slowly overtaken by the animal spirit they've invoked. Consider for a moment the internal torment that such transformations would bring, the overwhelming sense of isolation, the inability to ever return to the human world fully. Imagine the fear, the guilt, and the longing to break free from the creature you've become. How would it feel to look into the mirror and see a reflection that no longer recognizes you as you once were? To know that every step you take in your new form is a further departure from the person you once were? This duality is the true horror of the Skinwalker legend, not the physical transformation itself, but the emotional and psychological toll that comes with it. The Skinwalker is, in many ways, a prisoner of their own creation, trapped between the world of humans and the realm of beasts, never fully belonging to either. Imagine now the weight of such a transformation. The burden of living is something between human and animal. The Skinwalker is not simply a monster roaming the night. They are a creature filled with inner conflict, torn between their former life and the overwhelming power they now possess. As we consider this, let us explore the torment that comes with losing one's humanity and stepping into the dark world of the Skinwalker. To become a Skinwalker is to willingly sacrifice the very essence of what it means to be human. The stories tell of individuals who, after their transformation, are plagued by an insatiable hunger, a thirst for blood that is never satisfied. The animal instincts take over, and with them, the guilt and shame that comes from abandoning family, friends, and the life once known. The psychological toll is immense. Once human, the Skinwalker's mind becomes fragmented, caught between the remnants of their former self and the animal spirit that now controls them. They are constantly haunted by the knowledge that their humanity is slipping away, replaced by the cold, instinct-driven desires of the animal they have become. The struggle to hold on to their human identity is an ongoing battle, and with each passing day, it becomes more difficult to remember what it was like to be a person, to experience love, compassion, and the simple joys of human life. There is also the overwhelming isolation that comes with being a skinwalker. Once the transformation is complete, the skinwalker is no longer able to fully interact with the world they once knew. They are outcasts, feared by their own people, hunted by those who know the truth of their existence. They are forced to live in the shadows, unable to form meaningful connections with others, for fear that they will lose themselves completely. The loneliness of this existence is perhaps one of the greatest curses of all. As we imagine the life of a skinwalker, think about the constant fear that accompanies their every move. What happens when they begin to lose control of the animal instincts that now rule them? What happens when they become more beast than human? This loss of control, this feeling of being trapped within a body that is no longer their own, is a torment that no one could truly understand unless they had experienced it for themselves. To become a skinwalker is not a choice, it is a curse, a heavy burden that cannot be cast aside. It is an existence filled with fear, ill, isolation, and an unrelenting sense of losing oneself. For the skinwalker, there is no going back. There is only the darkness that stretches out before them, and the hope, perhaps a foolish hope, that one day they may find a way to reclaim their humanity, or at the very least, escape the overwhelming power that now controls their every move. As we step away from the haunting tales and delve into the realm of science and psychology, we begin to look at the origins of the skinwalker myth with a different lens. While the legends of shape-shifting, dark magic, and animal transformations remain deeply entrenched in culture and folklore, could there be another, more rational explanation behind these eerie tales? Could the concept of the skinwalker reveal something deeper about the human mind, about fear, and about the nature of belief itself? The skinwalker myth has persisted for centuries, passed down from generation to generation, remaining as vivid today as it was in the past. Yet, at its core, it raises a profound question. Is this myth purely a reflection of the human psyche? A manifestation of our deepest fears? Or is there something more at play? Could these stories, passed through the winds of time, hold an insight into the workings of the human mind? To answer this, we must examine the psychological and sociocultural factors that contribute to the creation and persistence of such legends. At the heart of the skinwalker myth is the idea of transformation. A person abandoning their humanity in favor of animal instincts. It suggests a deep-seated fear of the unknown, the terror of losing one's identity and control. In a way, the skinwalker is not simply a physical creature, but a representation of our internal struggle with the darker parts of ourselves, the parts of us that are untamed, unpredictable, and driven by base desires. The skinwalker, in its essence, embodies the fear of losing our grip on our humanity, and the terror that comes from seeing ourselves slip into something other. Psychologically, this fear is not unfounded. There are several well-documented psychological phenomena that could help explain the pervasive nature of the skinwalker myth. One of the most prominent is dissociation, a mental process where an individual disconnects from their own sense of self, often as a defense mechanism during moments of extreme stress or trauma. For someone who has undergone the transformation, the skinwalker could represent the ultimate form of dissociation, an individual so disconnected from their own humanity that they take on the form of another creature entirely. It's also worth considering the concept of collective trauma in understanding the skinwalker. The Navajo people, like many indigenous cultures, have experienced a long history of displacement, persecution, and cultural erosion. Could the myth of the skinwalker, with its themes of personal loss and transformation, be a reflection of the trauma that communities have faced throughout history? The skinwalker's abandonment of humanity could be seen as a metaphor for the loss of identity and culture, under the pressures of colonization and forced assimilation. The very idea of being transformed into something else could reflect a deep fear of losing one's identity and the struggles of holding on to cultural heritage. The Skinwalker also taps into the primal fears that reside in all humans, the fear of being consumed by something darker, something more powerful than ourselves. As we've seen in the legends, the Skinwalker is a being caught between two worlds, the human and the animal, the civilized and the savage. This duality mirrors a psychological conflict between the conscious mind and the subconscious, between the civilizing forces of society and the untamed urges that lie just beneath the surface. In a sense, the Skinwalker could be seen as an outward manifestation of the struggle between the civilized self and the more animalistic, primal forces that exist within all of us. But is there any psychological condition that could explain the belief in such transformations? The phenomenon of psychosis, particularly in the form of delusional parasitosis or lycanthropy, offers an intriguing potential explanation. Lycanthropy is a psychological disorder where the individual believes that they are transforming into an animal, often a wolf or a bear. In the past, many who were afflicted by this condition would undergo self-inflicted injuries, such as scratching at their skin or growing hair in patterns that mimic animalistic transformations. Though rare, this disorder could have contributed to the belief that humans could transform into animals, feeding into the Skinwalker legend. Another potential explanation comes from the concept of mass hysteria or mass delusion. In small, close-knit communities, a shared belief in supernatural phenomena can sometimes lead to widespread psychological effects, particularly in times of stress or fear. If a community collectively believes in the existence of skinwalkers, there could be an unconscious reinforcement of the myth, with people reporting sightings and experiences that align with the collective belief, despite them being based in fantasy. Over time, these stories become so ingrained in the culture that they take on the weight of truth, shaping how individuals within the community perceive the world. At the same time, the science of neurobiology also offers an intriguing angle. The brain, in its infinite complexity, is capable of altering perception and creating vivid, realistic hallucinations. In moments of extreme stress or isolation, a person's mind could easily interpret natural phenomena, such as shadows, sounds, or fleeting movements in the dark, as the presence of something supernatural. The intense psychological strain of living in fear or guilt, particularly after committing an unspeakable act, might cause the mind to manifest hallucinations of shape-shifting or transformation as a form of psychological defense. In all these psychological and scientific explanations, the Skinwalker myth serves as a way for humans to make sense of the darkness within themselves. The idea that one can transform into another creature, lose oneself entirely, is a potent symbol of the loss of control and the fear that we might not be able to reclaim our humanity once we cross certain lines. Yet, despite all these scientific explanations, the Skinwalker remains an enduring figure, a symbol of something greater than mere folklore. There is a reason these stories continue to circulate, even in modern times. Perhaps it is because the fear of transformation, of losing oneself, is something deeply ingrained in the human psyche. The Skinwalker is not just a myth, it is a mirror, reflecting our most primal fears and our endless struggle to maintain control over the darkness within. As our journey through the world of skinwalkers comes to an end, imagine yourself slowly returning to the present moment. The stories we have explored tonight of rituals, transformation, and psychological turmoil are not just ancient tales from a distant past. They are reflections of the fears and struggles that live within all of us. The fears of losing ourselves, of being consumed by forces beyond our control. Now, take a deep breath and let go of these heavy thoughts, knowing that you are safe in this moment, far removed from the legends that haunt the desert and the shadows. The stories we've shared tonight have no power over you, for they are but whispers carried on the wind. As you settle into a state of relaxation, Let your mind drift gently towards rest, knowing that you are untouched by the darkness we have explored, and that tomorrow is another day one that is entirely yours to shape. Good night.